All right. Well, first I want to say thank you to everybody in terms of volunteering your time to work with the, on the ILPRC and serving as a moderator. It's one of those things. It's a full day. Obviously very useful though. It's important for the residents and their development, but I wanted to say thank you for being willing to give your time to serve as a moderator for this. What we're going to do for the actual ILPRC, it's not going to be extremely different from the previous years if you've been involved. We're going to use Zoom meetings. So Zoom meeting will be the format. We're in a Zoom meeting right now. So the format for the presentation will be similar. The advantage is that the residents can interact with people, just like we're interacting now. Somebody can ask a question with a video and an audio portion where they could ask the question of the resident. The drawback is, just like earlier, the dog barking in the background. If somebody is unmuted and they make a bunch of noise, that can cause an issue. So the training is basically going to cover how do you mute everybody and then unmute a speaker, so those kind of functions. So if you have somebody when you're moderating that they're talking about, going to the store or who knows, or no, for that patient, do this, this, and this. That way you're able to quickly go to the place where you need to go to mute that individual, or you can mute everybody and then unmute the speaker to get them going again. Any questions so far in terms of, I don't know, I think most people, you guys are all dealing with residencies, right? So you're probably pretty familiar with Zoom and the functionality and everything that goes along with it. Is that correct? Or is anybody kind of a Zoom newbie?
I've done it a few times and I moderated last year, but I definitely need a little bit of a refresher.
Perfect.
I'm the same.
All right, and that's the goal. So anytime a question comes up, interrupt me, stop me, ask about different things. One of the problems with Zoom is that you can't really share Zoom very easily, right? So what we might do is if you want, go ahead on your computer now while we're talking, pull up any PowerPoint presentation that you want, like any old PowerPoint that you've had in the past. Content doesn't matter. But go ahead, if you're a moderator, go ahead and pull one up, because what we can do is if people want, if they don't feel comfortable, I can make you the host or make you a co-host so you can share that content. Or actually, I should be able, without even doing that, you can share and practice pulling up slides and those kind of things. So with that being said, what we can do, is everybody familiar in the bottom left where you have the ability to turn on your video and you have your ability to mute yourself or unmute yourself? So, right, the little microphone in the bottom left-hand corner, if you click on that, you'll mute yourself. You can see under my screen. All right, I'm muted so you couldn't hear me. And then also right next to the microphone is also your stop video. So you're able to turn off your video and then turn back on your video if you need. As the moderator, that's probably one of the things, depending when you're sitting there and you're going to be sitting there for the 7 hours or whatever it is, or 8 hours, the ability to probably turn off your video if you want to drink, you want to do different things is key. Again, this is all going to be very basic, but also because we just want to make sure we hit everything, right? With that, if you have trouble with your audio, the little carrots next to the microphone, if you click the little carrot next to your microphone, you'll pull up, and go ahead and do that if you want. And you'll see it'll say select a microphone, select a speaker. You can test your microphone and speaker if you want. So that morning you can get in there early. We're going to come in and the staff members will all be there because we're the hosts of the meeting. What we're going to do is we'll test your audio, we'll test your video, we'll be able to do that, and we'll also make you the host of the meeting. So each of you, right, initially the way Zoom works, I can't unfortunately schedule a meeting where BC is the automatic host. It has to be somebody on your account. but we can then quickly assign the host duty over to BC that morning. So, so that's one thing, but you can see here is a different way. If your microphone's not working, you can try to select a different microphone because maybe your camera has one as well as your computer, your speakers aren't sounding right. You can select different speakers. Same thing under video. You can click a caret next to that to make sure you're using your webcam instead of the one in your laptop or others. You can blur your background by clicking that caret. Or, you know, we don't recommend using virtual backgrounds just because they tend to eat up a lot of bandwidth. So if you're in a location that does have, you know, decreased or limited bandwidth, not using that is usually key. And Trish, Trish has a question. The other thing, day of, right? Your internet can be completely stable today, and then tomorrow, for whatever reason, you're having issues tomorrow morning, right? When it's going on. What you can always do if you are having connection issues and data, you know, it seems like your data, I can't talk all of a sudden, but you're not getting enough data flow, turn off your video because audio takes a lot less data than does video. And so if you're having trouble with streaming the video and the audio is getting garbly, turn off your video and hopefully that will give you enough bandwidth. Why I couldn't think of bandwidth, I don't know. You'll get enough bandwidth so that you won't have an issue. Trish, what was your question?
When we were talking about the moderators signing on, and then we're going to give them host, have we decided how far in advance we would like our moderators to sign in so that we can go over any testing and things of that nature and before some of the residents sign in?
I don't think we have officially, right? We have the sessions, you know, I've scheduled the sessions to go from like 6:30 in the morning all the way until 5:30 in the afternoon, just so that way they're open the whole time.
Maybe 10 minutes at least before official start?
I would say 15 minutes maybe, just because if we do have a problem with a microphone or somebody's computer, that gives people enough time to shut down their computer, restart it, and give it a chance. Because that is one of the other things I would recommend checking your Zoom app the day before or 2 days before, somewhere in there, just making sure it's the most up-to-date app so that you don't experience trouble that day. Sometimes updates, especially if you're a couple behind right now, the next update comes up, right? And then that's the one that stops your stuff from working. Hina, what's up?
So when we say 15 minutes before start, are we talking 7:30 in the morning or 8:45? So 7:30 is 15 minutes before keynote starts, right? Or before introduction and welcome starts. 9 o'clock is when the first block starts.
You know, and that is going to be, you know, one of the issues. So do we know how long the keynote is? It going to go right up until time, or how much of a break do we have in between?
15 minutes.
So then I would say keynote ends and everybody hops over, and then the staff can kind of make their way through the 7 rooms, and we'll ensure that we get you switched over and everything else.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
And I think 15 minutes is plenty based on the, you know, reverse exhibit that we do. We have usually about 25 to sometimes even more directors who are signing into Zoom rooms that we have to do a similar process where we make them the host and everything. And we're typically able to get that started pretty quick. But the 15 minutes is nice because like I said, if something does go wrong, it gives you a little bit more time before you're supposed to be up and going.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Any other questions so far, Trish?
Yeah, so is someone going to be giving a welcome and an introduction and then introducing the keynote? So whoever's doing that will need to have whoever's running that room be there probably in advance. So
that's probably the same, Trish, probably at least 15 minutes before the keynote. You know, the moderator for that session hops on along with a staff member to make sure everything's working correctly, and then gets that, and then the speakers set up. We test their microphone, test their setup too, so we're ready to go for the keynote. And then the others all hop on right after the keynote on their sessions to make sure they're good to go.
But who's giving the overall welcome to the ILPRC? Has that been determined? Is that going to be Nora, Hina, Chris? I mean, who's going to do the welcome prior to the keynote?
And introduce the keynote.
Pardon me?
And introduce the keynote.
Right, and that could be the person who then, which to me makes more sense to then introduce the keynote, and then does that person stay the moderator for that day? It doesn't have to, but at least we need to identify who's going to be welcoming everybody and introducing keynote.
I can do that.
Okay.
Yay, thank you.
And I'll be on there for support for you, Nora. So in terms of technical support, I mean.
I was hoping you'd say that.
Thanks, Nora.
So we just need to figure out exactly what the timing of that is, but we can talk about that later.
Yeah, and the same will be true at the end. We don't know if anybody wants to come on at the very end after the presentations and thank everyone for attending. And you know, we look forward to seeing you next year. So just think about that too. Nora, if you want to do that as well, or somebody else wants to do that at the end.
I can tell you right now, I would say no. My opinion would say no, because I think by the end of the day, this is my opinion, people are going to peter out, and it'll be mostly just the presenters and those that are, you know, they're
highly dedicated.
Highly dedicated, thank you, and moderators. So, but I'm happy to do whatever the group wants to do.
So just from past experience, I agree with you, Nora. At the end of the day, it is the hardcore attendees who are still there. So I believe we can write maybe a quick, short message that every moderator at the end of the day can use as their sign off. It could be 3 or 4 sentences and reminding everybody to, you know, put in for their CE code and thank them and see them next year. And that just makes it easier. Folks won't recongregate, I think, in a big room.
And Sonia, did you have a question, Sonia?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, when do you first want all of the moderators to sign on? Do you want the moderators in the keynote speaker address? I assume that's going to be like a separate link to a separate room.
I think that's up in terms of your time for the day and everything else. I mean, if you are interested, I think for the keynote, all the other moderators can kind of show up when just before the keynote starts to see it, if you're not moderating that session itself. So I think that's up, if you're planning on attending the keynote, I would say sign in a little bit in advance, just like the audience, and you'd be kind of like an audience member for the keynote. And then the 15, as soon as that's done, hopping over for the moderator responsibilities to your specific room.
Great, thank you.
This is good. Zoom is Zoom, but at the same time, a lot of good details we're talking through here for the actual day of. Does everybody, if you click on, I've got some, like I said, Zoom doesn't like to share Zoom. So unfortunately, I can't share me going through Zoom. So what I was going to do is show you a few features. I did screenshots yesterday where I kind of put together a quick Word file that highlights some of the functionality and where you can find it in Zoom. So what I am going to do, I'm going to share my screen and share it. So what you got, this is just, you should be seeing it says ICHP Net 3. These are the generic Zoom accounts that we used we have extra Zoom accounts that aren't, Trisha's account or my account that we use to schedule the Zoom rooms. So we already talked, everybody, while we were talking, right? You can see my cursor here where the mute function was, that up caret that you can click to get options under the microphone, turn on or off your video here, and then also the up caret next to the video. And here, I'll make this even a little bit bigger. So some of the things that you've got, you've always on Zoom on the bottom, you've got your control panel. So right down here where I'm kind of highlighting or hovering over, right? One is security. We'll talk a little bit about security options. Participants is a great place where you can click on it. It'll show you who all is in your room. It also gives you those options to mute people or boot people from the room and do some different things that we'll cover. The chat functionality is where you can click in there to send a message to somebody, the whole group that's in the room, or an individual. Here's the important share screen as a moderator, right? So this is where you click to actually pull up and share your presentation or the slides that you're going to be hosting. We won't really be using record or breakout rooms for this that I'm aware of, and then reactions. So if you do, again, people can, I don't think in this setting we're going to use reactions a lot, but if people wanted to clap when the presenter's done, those kind of things, I guess people can use, because it's a meeting, they will be able to use reactions. So one of the things, when you initially start Zoom, all the controls are typically at the bottom. Once you share a screen, the controls, it confuses some people because the controls all go to the top of the screen. And so I'll show that look a little bit here as we go through this as well. So again, this is a Word file I'm scrolling through. When you're the host, if you click on security, so this is an example where I click security. There's a lot of options that pop up. So you can see if let's say somebody from Russia pops in, I'm just going to pick on Russia, right? Somebody from Russia pops in and they decide that somehow they got into it and they're not supposed to be, and they're sharing inappropriate pictures or something. You could click security, click on share screen and unallow it, and then nobody, all the sharing of screens would stop. Right? So people couldn't share screens because you no longer allowed participants to do that. That's an extreme example. I don't think that's going to happen. We're not that big of a target, but if somebody did come in and was malicious, you can do those things. You can stop people from unmuting themselves. So right now they're set to allow people to unmute and ask a question. If you unclick this under security, people, once you mute them, they can no longer unmute themselves. So it's just a way, right, in terms of that crowd control, if there is somebody who's causing an issue, you can manage that. Questions on it? So again, security is where you get these functions. All right. Again, I'm not sure. Oh, I know what this one is. So I can't see it because this is in front. All right, the pictures. If you click under participants, so if you click participants, what you will get is a listing on the right of all the participants in the meeting. So you can see this one was just me yesterday by myself. And so what you end up with is that I'm on there, and you would see Nora, you would see Sonia, BC, everybody who's on it. Next to their name right here, there will be a function that says more. And there you can do different things too. You can mute that person. You can kick them out of the meeting. You can do a lot of different things under participant as well. So let's say I'm the Russian hacker that decided to pop into the meeting to mess with us. What you can do is I'm making a bunch of noise. I'm doing all kinds of things. You can find my name, right? You can see that I'm speaking. Because if you click participants right now on your screen, what you should see is that I'm the host, and you will see right next to my name the microphone that's always flashing green because I'm always talking. Right? So you'll see that. So you would be able to identify me as the problem who is talking about a patient, or who is on the phone while I'm on the meeting and you're hearing that conversation. You'd be able to say, mute that person as the host. So, here I actually pulled it up. You can see the other thing under that participants, when you're the host, and you will be made the host because that's one of the things we're going to do before the meeting starts. Here's that mute all button. So you're able to click that. Let's say there's just 5 people in your room that are causing trouble, and you're like, I don't know who I'm going to mute. You would be able to mute everybody, and then go back up in the participant list and see, BC is the resident presenting, and then ask BC to unmute or say, hey, BC, please unmute yourself. And then we can continue the presentation. Oops. Questions on that? All right. So I gotta move the pictures here again. So when you click on those ellipses, the ellipses are these guys right here. These are kind of like the more options. So when you're in the participant panel, you click the ellipses right here. What you get is these options. So you can see the different things you can do. Again, you could turn off allowing people to unmute themselves. You can, again, I don't know, people are naming themselves something inappropriate. You could say, no, you can't rename yourself anymore. Those kind of things. Otherwise, there's probably not a lot you're going to do with this. You're not going to enable the waiting room. You're not going to lock the meeting, those kind of things. But it does give you a little bit more functionality there in those ellipses again. All right. So any questions? All right. I'm seeing shaking heads. No. So, all right. Next is the share screen. So what we are going to be doing is, there's a couple of reasons. You're going to be, as the moderator, hosting the slides and advancing the slides for the presenters. The reason being is there was some discussion, having each of the residents pull up their own slides and then share them and try to make sure that that works and they know how to do it is problematic, right? ACPE accreditation as well, right? These are all accredited for CE, and we have to assure that they're the same slides that were reviewed. So that would pose an issue. And so what this does is it allows the resident really just to focus on the presentation and not worry about the technology and the pulling up of the slides and those kind of things. So what you would do, you can click share screen here. This is what would pull up. So what you can see is, and I can zoom in a little bit more. Oops. This is what the window that will pull up when you hit share screen. Now, what you can see is I had my email open, I had the snipping tool open where I took pictures of Zoom and different things. And here is a Word document. Now, this would be PowerPoint, or it could be, if you have those PowerPoints open, that's where you can select that PowerPoint to pull up the slides. Couple of things. I would recommend against screen sharing. If I click share screen here, it would pull up that same thing that's displayed in the document, or my PowerPoint. The issue is if during the presentation, you for some reason decide or aren't thinking, and you click on Chrome or you click on some other app, the audience is going to see whatever you're viewing. So when you click screen, the audience sees whatever is displaying on that screen that you selected. Whatever it is, right? If it's your desktop, you can see the desktop that that person is using, right? Whatever picture you have or other things. If you select, however, if you select the document or the PowerPoint presentation that you want to share, that's all that will display. So it won't, it'll just share that application and that slide set. Questions on that? We don't have any sound, If any of the presentations had video or other things in them, we would need to click share sound so people could hear the video, but none of the slide presentations have video or anything in it, so we should be good there.
So that's great advice, Chris. I didn't know the difference there. Are you going to get to the place of where we're going to be pulling these documents from?
Yes, we will. We can.
Okay.
I'll show you one thing next, and then we'll talk about how we're going to set up the slides and where you can get them for your session and everything, and kind of the organization we've planned for them. Does that work?
Yep.
Perfect. So one thing I wanted to show, this is what causes some, I'm going to make it a little smaller again. This is one of the things that can cause some confusion in Zoom when you're hosting slides. The control panel goes from being at the bottom and it shifts up to the top. And so it's kind of, I get why it does it, but it does make it, you're like, well, wait a second, how do I find the things that I want to find that were all down here? Now, where are they? So what'll happen is, here's your mute function right at the top, the start video, the security badge, right, for all those security options. If you click here for participants, you'll get that panel to pop up and chat. You can, one thing that is different, here's where if you need to stop the share for whatever reason, you can stop your share. You can also click here for more, for some more options as well while you're in there. But that's basically where the control panel goes to. So the control panel goes from down here to up here, up above. So. And what this is I click the more button so you can see what the more options on that top panel. So you can see, now this is another thing, people don't know this, but you can actually click that annotate and you can draw pictures on the slides too. So any of the audience members in the meeting could do that. So again, somebody nefarious could get on there and draw something. You can, if you needed to, you could hit disable annotation for others and they would not be able to do that. But anyway, so I don't think you're going to need the more function, but I wanted to show it just so you knew what's under that more button now as opposed to during the meeting. All right. So, and we can forward along those screenshots to everybody too, if everybody wants that, along with this video. But the video should capture all the screenshots and everything from that Word file that we just went through. Because I'm recording this and we'll get the recording out to everybody. In terms of Nora's questions on the slide decks, because like she said, as the moderator, each of the slides for your room are going to be organized for you and sent to you as that moderator. What we recommend is don't keep them in your email and use email that day to open them. Don't count on them being available on the cloud, right? Because what if there's an issue? What we would recommend is, a day or two before, download the slides to the desktop of whatever computer you're going to use. So that way you have a physical copy of it on your actual computer. What happens again too, there could be issues with access, right? For some reason, OneDrive isn't working that day or it's down. That way, right, you have a backup plan. Number two is if you're sharing from OneDrive, you've got to electronically go out to the slides to get them and bring them back to your computer and then share them via Zoom. So it also requires a little bit more bandwidth that way too, because you're pulling them electronically to share. So if you have a hard copy on your computer, it just makes it a little bit, it's less, you're pulling it from less places and it's just taking it from your computer and sharing it with Zoom. The other thing, Nora, your question, what we're going to do, we're going to have the presentations titled by the room. So let's say, Nora, I don't think you're the red room, I believe. If you're doing the very first session, the keynote and that room, that's the red room. So what you'll have is all the slides will say red room, and then it'll be 1A, 1B, 1C, then the title of the presentation. The reason why we're doing that is you'll know in your first block, your first hour, these are the red room presentations. 1A is the first one, 1B is the second one, 1C, right, and so on. So therefore, when you also pull them up, if you open them up on your computer, it should be red room 1A first, 1B second, 1C third. So they should automatically, if you open them and you sort them by file name, they will be in the order of the presentations for you. Does that make sense? Or any questions related to that?
That makes sense.
So that way, try to make it as easy as possible for everybody, right? So that it's all organized already based on the schedule. What other questions related to that?
When will we get those files? At what point next week?
What do you think, Trish, Maggie, or Heidi?
Well, we can once all the slides have been reviewed and are finalized, we can go in and rename them and put in, like, again, the color of the room and, you know, the 1A or 2A, 2B, 2C, whatever. So once we get all the slides finalized and the schedule finalized, we can rename them. There were 5 or 6 sets of slides uploaded over the weekend, so those probably need to be reviewed yet. But yeah, once we get those 2 things finalized, we can go through and rename them. So just depending on how quickly they can get reviewed.
All right, thank you.
And then Alethea is asking, will the CE code be in the slides?
This is being accredited by Rush, and there will be instructions in the syllabus and a link for people to go to. But we are also including a link to the REDCap surveys for our informational purposes. So there won't be a specific CE code, there'll just be a URL link for them.
What else? What did I miss? Does anybody want to practice sharing a PowerPoint presentation? You know, I had you all pull, or suggested that you all pull one up. Does anybody want to practice to share?
So Chris, this is Hina. Can I share something first, and then we can all share the screens?
Absolutely.
I was trying to assign who the moderators are for each room, so maybe we could do that real quick, and then we'll go to the other share screen.
Yep. I think that's good.
Could you kindly enable participant screen sharing?
Is that a security?
And I did, and then, yeah, that's typically, that shouldn't be a problem. Because if we make you the host, you should be able to share slides, and we'll allow you, you know, not allow, we'll have you do that morning before. That's part of that 15 minutes before, right? Making sure that you're able to share slides and things. We didn't want to turn it on where everybody can share, just because then, you know, in theory, somebody could share something inappropriate, but I don't think that's going to be a big risk.
Okay, thank you. Is everybody able to see an Excel spreadsheet?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, great, thank you. So I'm just about done with this. I know everybody asks, when's the schedule going to come out? So maybe an hour after I get done with this, I'll send it back out to the group, not necessarily for edits per se, but I do want to ask for some, you know, creative help. Like, I don't know how we're going to post this on the webpage, on the website, so folks can see it. So any, you know, creative redo of the format, I'm perfectly okay with. But as you can see on this spreadsheet, as we were referring to the rooms and colors, there's a red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, silver, gold, and now the pink room, which is the backup to the backup. Each of the rooms has 6 blocks in it, 3 before lunch, 3 after lunch. So whenever I refer to anything, it's like red block 1, and then as Chris was referring it to, so it's like red, 1A, B, and C would be the 3 residents for each block. I did make every effort to mix it up as best as I could. We know from past experience, certain topics get less attendance, such as some of the administrative or operational ones. So we interspersed them. I read most of their slides to see what kind of topic they were, and I would put it in between like 2 quote clinical topics. And then assigned an evaluator. Again, I tried to match evaluators with their area of expertise, but it doesn't come out one-to-one. So, you know, some folks are just gonna get what they get. And they each get 1 or 2 blocks to do. We're actually very close where most people get 1. And then if you select special people that, you know, I know and love, we'll get 2, and they'll yell at me, they won't yell at you. It's okay. And then I was trying to assign moderators by room. So I'm thinking, Chris, that you put the keynote in the red room. So I put Nora in the red room. And then going across, I'm sorry, Nora, I hope you like oncology. It's a little tight on the onc topics. I did try to spread them a little. Orange room, I assigned to Anna. It's a mishmash of different things, should be entertaining. Yellow room, is a mix of, again, a few different things: operations, anti-coag, cardiology. I think, Sonia, you'll be fine. That'll entertain you. Green room, I gave to BC. I know, BC, you love critical care, so there you go. It's all yours. Blue room, I took for myself, which is peds and ED. I know nothing about peds, so I'm going to learn. And then purple room, Alethea, I hope you're okay with the purple room. It's a mix of AM care, critical care, ID, internal medicine. And then silver room, I heard, Anna, you said Neil Schroeder. Did I spell his name correctly?
Yes, that is. Yes, thank you.
Okay. I hope he likes ID.
He does, yes.
Okay, good. Well, you know, I like to make sure everybody's entertained, which leaves us a person to do the goal room, which is just 3 poor, lonely residents doing ID. I didn't feel like adding an hour at the end of the day because nobody will show up for that, whereas at least in the morning, somebody will come for those. So that's whoever our last moderator is, unless somebody on the group right now would like to be the last moderator and we have it covered.
So is that just for the first hour then that you need a moderator?
Yep, just 1 hour.
Okay. Let me see if I can rope somebody into that.
And then they could join in any other room that they like. So yeah, we just need one for that first hour. And then we have the pink room that I just added in at the end in case we want to throw that Zoom link in there and have it ready to go.
Yep. And we do have, you know, we do have all the Zoom links. I created the rooms last week. So we'll just have to make sure we merge the, I sent Maggie a file that has the Zoom links in there. So we'll make sure to, you know, we get just combine these 2 files.
Yes, so as soon as I send this one out back to the group, maybe I'll just send it to the tighter group so that we don't get confused about what's real and what's not. And then if Maggie and Chris, if you could take care of that file merge and the make it look pretty part, and then have it posted, then that's what the rest of us will use as our final version going forward.
Okay.
And are we putting it out on the web page too, under the ILPRC page?
There will be, I've already added the links to the silver room, purple room, red room tabs, but we are working on also having a layout that's similar to this. I'm not sure if it would be on the ILPRC or on ICHP, but we are going to do something.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. And again, I apologize for taking so long, but my brain goes floating when I'm trying to match like 3 different people up and not have them overlap. It just takes me a little while, but I think I'll be done in an hour and I'll send it back out.
Well, I think this looks phenomenal.
Yeah, thank you for all your help, Hina.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, I love all the residents and preceptors who have somehow reached out to me and said, I can do this, but I can't do this. So I tried really hard to get all the requests in, the AM, PM requests, and so on and so forth. So the general instructions to residents is you get your slot, please make it to your slot. For the assigned evaluators, if they can't do their assigned slot, the instructions are, we'll find someone else who can. We don't mind. It's okay. So just get it covered.
There are a lot of open spots in what you were showing us for evaluators. Does that mean that we have to recruit more evaluators?
No. It's just I'm not done, Nora. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. All right. No, you don't have to apologize. I just wanted to know whether I need to shake some bushes.
No, that bush is well endowed this year, so okay. I'm lucky.
Oh, good.
We do have a handful of students, so if I run out of preceptor evaluators, I'll give it to a student. But for the most part, I think we'll be fine.
And BC, did you have a question?
No, that was my question that Nora asked, because I saw that there were some empty spots. Ina, just out of curiosity, because I know I'll be doing this next year, did you just like send an email out to like the preceptors that kind of mentored the research project, or how did you get the evaluators?
So no, we took it right from the registrants list. So one of the things, every registrant got something. So if they paid for a registration, they got assigned.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And And that's why I put 2 per session, just in case one doesn't show or whatever it might be, it takes care of the situation. And of course, that doesn't mean that everybody else can't evaluate. In fact, we encourage evaluations from every attendee for every session. And so as you're moderating at the top of every hour, just kind of mention that, saying, you know, the link to the Red Cap survey to provide evaluations is in the chat box, so cut and paste that in there. We do encourage everyone to give evaluations. Last year, we did give small prizes like $10 Starbucks gift cards to the top 5 evaluators, you know, just for volume. And that worked out nicely, but we're not necessarily doing that this year. But anyway, do encourage everybody to give evals. I think residents who see only 1 or 2 evals come across feel quite sad that nobody really, you know, wants to give any feedback. So we want to encourage that every hour.
Okay, great. Thank you.
One question that does come up. So with the sharing of the slides right now, the plan is for the moderators to advance the slides for the resident presenters. There is a functionality in Zoom, which we don't typically love because it adds some clunkiness, which you can allow the resident to advance the slides, but there's often a delay in response. So just wanted to, you know, with the planning group, are we good with the moderators advancing the slides for the presentation?
Yes.
Sorry. Perfect. So the resident will just have to.
Sorry, Chris. I saw that a few of the residents, not everybody, probably maybe 10 or 15% of the resident slides had animation in them, you know, where they have things flying in. How do we address that? Or should we just ask them at the beginning that if they have animation that they need to prompt us to advance?
That's what Melissa and I, you know, doing this for quite a few annual meetings and spring meetings, hosting the slides and things. That's typically what we do is, again, what I've done too, we review the slides to see if our slide set that we're assigned has a bunch of animation in it. We kind of mark it. But then also I think that question, like you said, is probably the best way to get at that. Just say, hey, if you have a lot of transitions or, you know, I'm joking, right? The vanishing or the appearing stuff, the animations, just let us know when we need to advance for you.
Okay, sounds good. So I think that's a good one, like at the beginning of the hour when we're making sure that all 3 of our presenters have arrived, is to ask that question and they can disclose accordingly. But I think as you pull up the slides, you can see the little stars with the rainbows on them. That would be helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. And we've done it both ways before. I can tell you there was a pretty big presentation with a key person, and we were allowing them to control the slides. And right, they ended up escaping completely out of PowerPoint and shutting it down, and then it was like, oh, where'd it go? So we had to stop and get everything pulled back up and everything else. So even though it adds a little bit of clunkiness with the next discussion, it's a smoother transition of the slides because the slides change immediately as soon as somebody hits the button. And also they can't close it out and completely close down all your slides on you and that kind of stuff. So we'll stick with that then, that we're going to advance the slides. The only thing to remember too, as the moderator who is sharing your screen or sharing your program all day, pretty much everything you do with the mouse, they can see. So what I would recommend is for that day, plan on having a second device. Maybe it's your phone, maybe it's an iPad, maybe it's another, you know, I've got too many computers, but you know, you got your MacBook sitting over here. So that way for emails and for, you know, responding to people and doing different things while you're moderating if you have to. Because what's going to happen is when you're on the computer this long sharing a screen, something's going to pop up or you're going to want to respond to something and you're going to want to go into your email. And next thing you know, you're like, oh, wait, I'm supposed to be advancing slides or doing whatever. And so I would recommend having a second device with you for doing all your you know, other work that you're supposed to be doing that day. Hopefully there's not a lot, but but it's just that keeps it clean so that way you don't mess up the what you're sharing.
So speaking of that, for technical difficulties, what is the best way to reach one of you guys who would know what to do? Or can we create a chat group on a phone, like on our phones?
Yep.
You know, so it's away from a computer.
I think my cell phone is at the bottom of the signature page, and we can get you contact information. Like I think, you know, a text message, hey, we're having trouble. Then my plan is just to be able to hop into any of the meetings as needed to help for technical support. I know Heidi's kind of planning on the same thing, and other staff, where that way, that's one of the reasons why we were figuring we wouldn't host, is if anybody has trouble. Sonia, your computer for whatever reason dies, you know, not going to happen. But if it does, then Heidi and the staff will have all the slide decks ready to go, saved on our computers. So then we can step in for Sonia when her computer fails, and we can start hosting that room, and we're the backup. But we can get a list of phone numbers around to the other moderators so that you can reach out if there is a problem. Does that sound good to everybody? I think a phone, like a cell or an office phone for like Heidi, where you can call her directly when something goes wrong if you have to, makes the most sense, because it's real time. I'm in trouble now. You don't want to send an email and hope that Chris reads it, you know, in 5 minutes. If something goes wrong, you want me as soon as you can get me, right?
Also, if you're sharing screen, I believe that if you have, let's say, your email set up so that anytime you get an email, it pops up and says you have an email from Chris Crank, and, you know, part of the message is starting there. I would probably recommend deactivating that, unless Chris or Heidi, that doesn't show.
If you share PowerPoint, it won't show up. So if you only share the PowerPoint app, none of that stuff pops up. If you share your screen, anything that to Trisha's point, anything that pops up on your screen will be visible to the audience. So yeah, I mean, you know, if your Gmail pops up messages when you get one, you get a preview, or your Outlook or whatever, that would be visible if you share the screen. So if you're sharing screen, which I don't recommend, then yeah, make sure you turn that off, or otherwise everybody's going to see the emails that you're getting throughout the day that pop up in the, you know, bottom right. If you share PowerPoint, that should not be visible. So those can continue to pop up, and they wouldn't be seen.
Yeah. If you're not sure, not tech savvy like me, it's probably best just to turn them off, just in case.
The other thing is test your device, you know, hop on Zoom on whatever device and location you're going to be actually hosting, right, or doing the moderating, just to ensure that the internet connection is good enough and that the device actually works for you. Because again, the last thing you want to do with that 15 minutes before is you hop on the device and you find out the internet isn't good enough, or you need a bunch of updates or those kind of things in order to get it to work.
So in line with what you were just saying about that, Chris, last year, I believe none of our presenters shared video. Is that also what we're doing this year?
No, I think my personal opinion, again, we can't force people, unfortunately. You know, I'd like to force people, but we can't force people to share their video. So I think we should just strongly encourage it. Again, the residents should be presentable, and they should want people to kind of put a face to a name. You know, that's kind of the part of this whole presenting, is people can actually see who they're interacting with. But that's my opinion. I would defer to the RON and the committee, the ILPRC committee, of what their opinion is.
I believe we shared video is required. But again, we can't force people to do video. And if the video is holding up the presentation, I think we'll have to cut the video. But it's encouraged. As far as the audience sharing video, I don't prefer that at all, but that's just me.
I agree. I think, the audience typically video off and muted, right? Unless you're asking a question or you're interacting, with the resident about their presentation, people in the audience optimally would have video off and sound off, right?
Should we have some general comments that every moderator should be saying at the beginning of each session, or did somebody already say this and I'm not listening?
No, I think that's a good idea, Nora. Just something very basic to say, residents are encouraged when we're having that initial meeting with the residents, you're encouraged to have your video on, those kind of things. And then also for the general audience, if you're not asking a question or if you're not presenting, please mute yourself and turn off your video so there aren't any disruptions to the presentation.
So I will throw some together and then have Hina look at them since she's done this before, and Alethea, and then maybe by the end of the week we'll come up with those.
I think you probably really want to encourage them to use chat though, rather than unmuting and asking a question, or not necessarily. How did you do it before?
Yeah, I was going to say, Trish, feedback from the RLM and the ILPRC group, what would you prefer?
Is it required for evaluation of the resident in some way that it's preferable to have the person ask the question live versus through chat? I don't know that that would make a difference.
Does anybody have a strong opinion one way or the other? I mean, we can use the chat. The nice thing about it is people can ask questions and not feel too, nervous about it, I guess, or worry about saying something in front of a group. I do feel like something a little bit is lost in terms of the questions and the interaction through the webinar version and the texting in the questions. But maybe that's because, guys, I like to, the joke that always gets told is that I like to talk and, hear voices and things.
If I remember correctly, we have 2 minutes for questions and answers. Is that correct still? Like after the presentation?
Yeah, so 15 minutes presentation and then 3 minutes question answer. So each slot should be like 18 minutes max.
Okay.
It gives you a minute or so to switch.
Okay. Yeah, I don't feel very strongly either way. I think with the chat, it may just get more questions, kind of like Chris kind of mentioned, people feel more comfortable, which is good. Like we want them to ask questions. They may just not be able to go through every question because then they have to read it and answer it. So maybe like the raising of hands too, will kind of, because I feel like maybe people will be able to answer 2 to 3 questions at most in that time. But with the chat, they have to spend the time to actually read what the question is and then answer. And there's probably going to be a few more questions in the chat than if people were to raise their hands.
Yeah, I was going to suggest if you do have anybody speak up that they raise their hand and then you call on them so that you don't get people talking over each other. Does everybody know how to do the raise hand? It's in that reaction section at the bottom. It says raise hand. So you would have to maybe tell people that as well. Most people should be familiar with it, but I have found that there are others who still don't.
So, Hina, is that you typing?
Yes, that's me typing.
In that section that you're in right now that you just added, it says all attendees are asked to keep the chat box open to provide answers. Are we wanting the presenter to put answers in the chat box, or am I misunderstanding
So the audience. So for example, when they do the learning assessment question.
Okay. All right. Maybe that needs to be clear there. Okay. Provide answers for audience participants. Oh, I see. Got it. I'm on the same page.
Question. Hina, since you're sharing the screen, I'm curious to know, are you able to see the reactions? Are you able to see someone raise their hands from your screen?
Yeah, like Alicia, I can see your thumbs up.
So you are, okay, so if I am the moderator and I have my screen up with the PowerPoint, I will still be able to see the participants on Zoom, correct?
So as long as you keep your right side column of participants visible, then you can see the reactions. So if you collapse that down or hide it, then you will not be able to see the reactions. It's the same thing with the chat box, right? Like if the chat box is collapsed or hidden, then you won't be able to see the answers in the chat box.
Okay. Because I'm so used to using WebEx, and sometimes when I'm sharing my screen, I'm not able to look at the chat box unless I exit out of the screen sharing.
So
right.
So okay, so that's good to know about Zoom.
Yeah, if you go up to the upper right-hand corner, there should be a little box, like nine squares with the word view next to it. So the upper right-hand corner, if you click view, you'll see there's when somebody is sharing slides, there is a standard view, a side-by-side speaker, and a side-by-side gallery. What usually we either use side-by-side speaker or side-by-side gallery. Side-by-side gallery, Alethea, is kind of what you're referring to. So that's what I'm viewing right now. So I see everybody kind of in a gallery view on the right, and I see Hina's Word document on the left. And then when everybody was putting their thumbs up or their different, different symbols, then you can see all those show up in all the participants. If you do speaker, you'll only see the square for the person who's actively speaking at the time that's happening.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank
now
you.
For the hands up, you have to click it again in order to take your hand down, or else you as the moderator, after the person has asked their question, put the hands down again.
Yeah, the hands up, hands down appears on that person's screen too, right? It's like a floaty bubble at the bottom. So they can take their own hands down, right?
Yep.
They can, yeah, but sometimes people don't realize it and they leave it up. They don't know that they have to click it again because the other reactions go away on their own, just not hands up. And then depending on how many people you have in your audience, you may have to click the arrow key down to look and see the other people to see if they have hands up. I don't know if it shows though, like maybe we can do it, like look at the participants. No, right? You can't see hands up on there. If anybody has their hand up, it doesn't show up on there because that you can see, usually you can see everybody. Oh, wait, I can see the hands up.
Yep, they do show up.
Okay, so that's probably the best way to see that.
Okay, and I believe if you have like several people, like 20 people on the room or something, and you can't see them all on one screen, if someone who is off screen raises their hand, they kind of jump to the front so you can see that they have their hand raised.
Yep. And there's also a tally at the bottom of the participants too. You can see there's 2 hands up, 1 smiley face, and 1 heart. Are you guys seeing that? As the host, you can see that. So in other words, what it does is in the bottom of that participant panel, when you're the host, it actually shows you there's 2 people with a hand up, there's 1 person with a smiley face, 1 person has a dog, those kind of things actually show up at the bottom of the participant panel. So you get a summary of that.
So you can pull the participant panel, if you have more than 1 screen, you can pull it and put it over to the side and see it up all the time, right?
Yep.
So if you have another screen, you can click on it, pull it up, and move it over to the other screen. I usually do that when I'm posting.
And then
same with the chat. You can click the chat and bring it over so that you see the chat going.
I do that too. If I have more than 1 screen, I'll keep my PowerPoint on 1 screen, and then I'll pull up chat and participants so I can keep track of who's on there. The other suggestion that I was going to make for moderators, if you can print the handout version of your slides ahead of time, what I like to do is go through my slides and then mark if there's any transitions and where they like happen. Just like sometimes if there's like 4 transitions on a slide, I'll just mark 1, 2, 3, 4. So I kind of know you can still talk to your presenter at the top of that session. and just ask them, do you want me to go through them all at once? Or do you want me to, are you going to let me know when to go through them? But then you can mark them on that sheet. The other thing that I find helpful is that then you can kind of follow along in terms of, you know, how much time is left in their presentation, where they're at in their slide set, because sometimes I've had it where the non-presenter mode of PowerPoint will keep going with me and I can see where I'm at. But other times if I've clicked off of something, I haven't quite figured out what makes it do that, but I won't see where we are in the process of it. So I highly recommend printing off the handouts if you can.
The handout for each presentation?
I do, or if you just want to take notes, if there are special transitions or how many slides there are, something like that. But I've just found it very helpful to follow along, and then I just, you know, check it off as we get there, and it keeps me on track too.
It's not something you have to do. It's just when Melissa and I, what we found from hosting so many, you know, annual meetings, like I said, spring meetings and everything virtual, when you're controlling the slides, it just helps you remember how much more of their presentation is there as a moderator, right? And then also, like she said, those transitions and things, if, you know, you don't necessarily have to print out every single slide, but if you want to go through your however many in that day, and then you find one that has, you know, I'm teasing, but it has 45 transitions in a, you know, 10-minute presentation, print that one out, and then you could always mark it and kind of highlight how that one looks. Because it's just, it does help in terms of when you have so many presentations and you kind of remember them, but you can't remember them, and you're advancing the slides, it gives you an idea of where you're at.
But the presenter is going to tell me when to advance the slide, right?
They are.
Okay.
They are. So it's not a you have to do it. It's just it does help with the knowing the content of what they're going to present, or having it sitting there in front of you while they're presenting, and you know, okay, 3 slides from now is when they're going to have all the, you know, all the star wipes. It just it helps you to know that that's what's going on.
Yeah, or if you need to tell them, you know, you've got 2 minutes left and you've got 50 slides to go or something.
Yeah, correct. Because it helps you then to say, yeah, the resident has another 20 slides, yet I'm teasing, right? Hopefully they don't have 20 slides total, but they've got 20 more slides to go and they've only got 6 minutes left. You know, what do? You might have to say, you know what, you know, we're getting close, or you can send them a direct message that says, hey, we're getting close to time and you've got 20 slides left. You sure you're good?
Okay.
Because we can't do the cards, right? Like we used to do at Great Lakes and everything, where you give them the green card, the yellow card, and the red card, right?
Well, but you actually can, right? I mean, at Great Lakes, we didn't know how many slides they had left either, but we could give them a 3-minute warning through a chat.
Yes. It just, what I'm getting at, Nora, is it helps you know with all those slides if that resident is potentially in trouble or not.
Well, I appreciate the suggestion, and it sounds like a good idea, but I think we could also, it's a resident's responsibility, and you could also give them, you know, a 3-minute warning to the chat that hustle, or I'm going to cut you off.
Sonia, did you have a question?
Yeah, for those of us that are only going to be using one screen, is there a way to also pin the chat like on the side of a screen alongside that gallery of who is in your meeting room so that it's a little bit easier to view?
You can, when you hit chat, you can go ahead and try it now. Click chat, and then you can see it pulls up as that little box.
Mm-hmm.
Click next to where it says chat up at the top, kind of like when you're moving a window around in general, and you can kind of move that over to the side to the right or wherever you would like on the screen.
Thank you.
If you use the pop-out version, like I usually pop out the participant list and the chat box and just kind of have them floating in either corner. And that way you can see both, generally in a smaller view, but at least can see both of them up.
Great.
what else did we forget, or what else do we need to talk about? There's always something, but.
So Chris, I'm going to ask this question just because because I made the biggest Zoom faux pas 2 years in a row. Each of these Zoom links for each of the different rooms, they're like independent accounts, right? Like they're not all out of the same. Okay.
Correct. We have 15 Zoom licenses total. And so each one of these are separate accounts. So in theory, they can even still host one more meeting at the same time. So they're eight independent Zoom accounts.
Okay, thank you. Sonia will probably smile and laugh because I know we cut each other off like 6 times before we recognized that was a problem. So thank you.
Yes, no, and that webinar, in case anybody ever does webinar, it's even worse. You think you can't, under each account, you can only have one webinar going at any one point in time. So if you're ever using Zoom webinar, know that too, is you can only have one going. So unlike meeting where you can have 2 under one account, but if you try to do a third one, it says no, right? With Zoom webinar, you can only do 1 at a time. And it's only the person who basically registered or started that webinar or built it. So
right.
Yeah, no,
thank you.
We should be good. We have all independent accounts for that. So.
And then my last question, so lunch, we have that break right in the middle of the day from about 12:20 to just before 1 o'clock. What do you suggest we do? Do we just leave everything running and just leave it like that? Or is it getting logged off in the middle?
I would say just leave it up, because then you stay as the host and everything. But if you do close it out, right, that is one of the things where you could, that brings up a good point, Ina. If you, for whatever reason, you lose internet connection, you accidentally click X and you get, you close it down or whatever as a moderator, send, a message to Heidi or I or to whoever, and we can get back in there and get you reassigned as the host. So that would be the advantage of not signing out at lunch, is you would just stay as the host and working in there.
Yeah,
okay.
and I believe even as you as the host, if you suddenly lose your internet or something, because it's a meeting, the meeting will continue in the background even if you're not there. So you can just rejoin that meeting. So like the whole thing won't go down.
Okay, good to know. Thank you.
And I scheduled these as meetings where people can join at any time. And I did that on purpose, so that way we don't have waiting rooms. We don't have like, oh, it's 5 minutes before, you can't join the meeting. The meetings are open in terms of time to join. What that also means, though, is if a resident happens to be in there 15 minutes before everything starts, we may pop in there and there may already be a resident, that's presenting, or somebody who wants to, as an audience member, may already be there at the beginning.
So what is the next communication to the people that are presenting? Are they going to get an email, or is it up to the RPDs to communicate, which I think is just fine? What should be the next communication between now and the 20th, if any? No?
I believe we have an email blast scheduled. I'm just checking my calendar right now.
Okay, thank you.
I think, notifying people, I don't know if we email all the schedules. I don't think we want to email schedules to individuals, but an email that lets people know that the schedule is out there, it's available to check it. Here's the website, the link to it. I think that was our plan, was to notify people a couple more times that, hey, check the website to see when you're presenting. Or if anybody who registered, here it is, it's up. Take a look at the, the schedule that we're putting together.
And Melissa's working on the syllabus, so the syllabus will also be on the website, and she can mention that in the email, but the syllabus directs them to the website, links them to the website with the full schedule.
Yeah, what I have.
The website. That's a good thing.
I have written down that like our deadline for finishing the syllabus and then hopefully getting the email out was the 17th, just to like, hey, we're a couple days away, check the final schedule, check out the syllabus.
Okay. And that will provide them, the presenters, the links on where they tune in on Friday morning.
Yes.
Okay,
But
fabulous.
that is a good point, Nora. There aren't separate speaker links. So unlike kind of when you do it via Zoom webinar, the resident will just join whatever room they're presenting in. So we'll have the 8 rooms with links, right? And it's a generic meeting link. They can click it and the speakers will be able to enter that room just based on clicking the general link for the meeting.
And this
Okay.
email blast on the 17th, I believe, is going out to attendees as well.
Does what I said make sense though? Like,
yeah.
So it's just it's a room link, right? Anybody who clicks that room link will be automatically in the meeting, just like we are now.
Oh, okay, I'll have to go there and try it out. I guess I have twofold motivation. I want my residents not only to get into the room where they're presenting, but also get into other rooms to listen to other presentations, which they will be able to find out from the website.
Yep.
Correct.
And it'll be based on the room, right? Like the red room will have its own meeting link for the entire day. The green room will have a meeting link for the entire day.
Right.
So at any point in time during the day, either the presenter or the audience member can click on it and it'll open up a Zoom meeting just like this, and they'll be in the presentation.
And they'll be able to see the schedule, so they'll know, I want to learn about oncology, I want to learn about AmCare, I want to learn about critical care, and they can bounce around based on the schedule and then find the link.
Absolutely. Yep. And so it should be relatively easy. Then there's only 8 links to choose from, right? As opposed to individual sessions and having to click on an individual session link, it's really just the room for the whole day. So based on the schedule and the time, they can say, oh, I want to be in the green room for this presentation. So I'll click that green room link. They pop into the green room. And then, if we're on schedule, then hopefully that presentation is going on.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. Okay, anything else we need to cover?
I just have a quick clarifying question. So from the host perspective, so I understand I'll be in the orange room all day. And what is your recommendation? So since we have 3 consecutive presentations, should I just pull up those 3 PowerPoints and minimize or maximize and bam, 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 based on who's presenting? And then we have that quick break where I can pull up the subsequent 3 presentations.
That's what I would recommend. That's what we typically, again, do. I keep mentioning the spring and annual meetings, right? But we have morning tracks and afternoon tracks, and that tends to work well. That way you have the 3 up that you need. Because the other problem is, Anna, if you open up all 12 presentations, I don't even know how many there are, right? But if you opened up all of them, then when you're going to do that share screen function, sometimes it gets very difficult to find the PowerPoint that you're looking for. So,
exactly. Okay.
So I would recommend pulling up the 3 that you need for that hour, and then going and switching between those. And then at the end of the hour, what you do is you finish it up, right? And then you open up the next 3, and then you get ready to share the next 3.
Sounds good. Thank you.
And will our resident presenters know ahead of time that the moderator is the person that's going to be controlling their slides during the conference?
I think we should probably, we can put that in the communication, I guess, out. We should include something about that in the email that we communicate out to all the resident participants.
And of course, we can remind them at the beginning of that hour when you're doing the head check, right? That, oh, Andy, you were here, Julie, you were here, Vin, you were here. Just a reminder, right? And then the other thing that comes up is the dead silence that occurs at the end of a presentation when the presenter says, and now I can answer any questions you have. Please, as the moderator, if there's dead silence like that, fill it with a question, I think we're all pretty savvy and can come up with a question to ask to allow the presenter to answer the question. It also gives that 30 seconds for someone else to think of another question and hop in, right? So don't be the first one to jump in if there's questions or hands up there or things in the chat box to read out. But if there's complete silence, then please fill the silence.
Yeah, and you can, Hina, you were working sort of on a moderator script there. Is that what you were typing in? So you can remind the moderators there to tell the residents that you're going to be using their slides, you know, moving their slides and all of that good information that you just talked about.
Yeah, let me add that in at the top. Thanks, Trish.
Yeah, and at the end to ask a question if there is crickets. Hopefully their preceptor will be there too and will ask a question just to somebody from their residency.
Yeah, you'd be amazed how that does not always happen.
And lastly, do you care at all about if, let's say, I have to stop my video for a moment, do we care about what pops up on my screen as the moderator? Like, do we all want to have some sort of professional picture pop up? Is just the name okay? Does it matter?
I think it's either way. You know, I think either would be reasonable. It's kind of whatever you feel most comfortable with. I think your name would be fine, or your name and your institution. If you want to, rename yourself that day to include where, what institution you're from. But I don't think you have to have the profile pic if you don't want to.
So I threw up a slide that we've used in the past. If anybody wants this, we could put this out there. I mean, it's the generic logo right off of that website. We don't have to use it. It's there.
Whatever, it's whatever the RLN or the ILPRC committee thinks.
That slide's nice, but I don't want to try to button this down too much personally. I think, something professional is just fine.
Yeah, and when we send out the syllabus, maybe look and see if on that script that you're writing up, you can say on there for the moderator, say, here to get information on how to get your credits, go to page 5 of the syllabus for information, or go to page 4 to get information on how to do the evaluation for the resident, things like that.
Okay, anything else before we break up?
Does anybody else have anything else?
Thank you, Chris, for your directions, and everybody else for their insight. This is very, very helpful.
And I think we're in good shape. I think, we got a good plan, and, we'll execute it and we'll do fine. And again, thank you everybody for, your volunteering of your time and everything for the, to help make ILPRC successful. We appreciate it.
Gonna go fine.
Absolutely. Something will go wrong, and it's okay, right? It's just like a wedding. It's just like, it's an event. Something's not going to work quite the way you thought. Don't worry too much, and we'll, there's a solution, and we'll get through it. So.
All right, everybody have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.